how leaders should think about not losing the human touch, I would say you should double down on how thinking through your organization and the relationships between the people that are doing the work, both within your organization and across your ecosystem. One AI-driven transformation, which is a little bit of a misnomer when we talk about AI-driven transformations, because the actual, it's human-driven and it's AI that's being used. But one transformation in the realm of AI that really excites me right now is seeing more and more work that we weren't able to get to before now being able to be done with autonomous agents. And I'll give you an example. And in the company Dow Chemical, well-known manufacturing company that manufactures large vats filled with various chemicals like Purell for sanitizing our hands and things like that. The way that they used to pre-AI, right? The way they used to handle checking these chemical vats and doing safety inspections was they would have to stop production, which slows down the amount of value that they can put out into the world. And then they would have to drain the vats, and then they would have people don hazmat suits and go inside and do various checks, which was a dangerous operation for them to be exposed to those chemicals. And then afterward, they would come back out and refill and start production again. Well, now, thanks to the ability of AI to be able to do various types of computer vision, and to be able to do quality inspections and autonomously navigate environments, they're able to just drop these drones down into aquatic drones down into the vats. They do the safety checks and without having to ever stop production. And then the work is done without those people that were previously having to put on those hazmat suits and go inside, now don't have to be exposed to those chemicals. They didn't lose their jobs. They still have so much other work to do. This is one less thing on their plate. And that's the thing I'm seeing more and more with organizations. That there's in the media, if you look, they're talking about how AI is going to replace all work and things like that. I've yet to see anything even close to that. The vast majority of organizations that are implementing AI well are finding all this work that they couldn't get to before, and they're able to use technology to be able to augment the amount of value that they're creating for the world. How can organizations leverage AI without losing the human touch is a really, really good question. And it's really a systemic question. So organizations, just like many, many things in our world, are a form of system. And the way that we were first set up, sort of the management and the organizational leadership world, all the way back in 1911, the first ever management consultant wrote a book called The Principles of Scientific Management. And it was taking this lens of seeing the world through an industrial revolution era sort of worldview, and thinking about everything as a machine, like an industrial machine. And he wrote down these precepts of management through that worldview. And so ironically, what I found in my work and research is that is one of that foundation that he set that continues to carry forward through many of the different ways that we lead and manage today, is one of the biggest things that's holding back now AI projects. So when I was at Microsoft and I was flying out to meet with Fortune 500 C-level executive teams to help them develop their strategies, it wasn't the technology that was the problem. We already had things in production. Other companies were already getting value out of AI. The biggest thing holding them back was friction between people and between different types of experts inside of any given organization who have very valid opinions on what should be done. But often when they meet with friction, they're not able to, all their energy, instead of going outward and creating value in the world, is now turned inward and trying to vie for purchasing power and things like that. And so in terms of how leaders should think about not losing the human touch, I would say you should double down on how thinking through your organization and the relationships between the people that are doing the work, both within your organization and across your ecosystem. An organization has I define as three main layers. There's the physical layer, which includes all your buildings and your assets and physical assets. And then there's a digital layer, which includes software and AI and et cetera. And then there's a social layer. And many organizations just take the social layer for granted and focus down on their investments and thinking and problem solving onto the digital and physical layers. But that social layer in the era of AI is actually the thing between many organizations and unlocking value from AI in the first place. So what steps can professionals use to ensure responsible and ethical AI use? I see this all the time with organizations trying to figure this out and really thinking through, okay, we don't want to slow down innovation, but we also want to make sure we're applying these things in a responsible way. And so I created something called the AI trust equation, and I wrote an article about it in VentureBeat that builds on, if you're familiar with the trust equation in the first place, that was written about in many years ago, 25 years ago or so, and codified as an equation of what builds trust between people. And it's credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-interest. So someone has to be credible in your eyes. They have to show up consistently. There has to be some form of, feeling like they care about you and are interested in you. And then it's all can be, completely undercut if they're totally self-interested. And so I decided that would be a good lens to create something similar, but focused on AI. And so I created the AI trust equation, which is trust equals security plus ethics plus accuracy divided by control. So the way that organizations and professionals can think through that, I would say, is to define what level of security am I willing to tolerate? And anything that falls below that, I'm not even going to consider. And the same thing for ethics. And that comes into not only how it's applied now and what kind of output it has, but how was it made? And what are the values even of the people that lead that organization? I think is a factor that or people are still trying to think through and weigh. And then accuracy, obviously, that one's pretty straightforward. Most organizations are familiar with how important that is. And then divided by control. And that part of that, I'd say, is that it doesn't necessarily mean this idea that AI is going to get beyond our control as society. That's a whole nother conversation. But the idea that when you're implementing something inside of your organization, the people that it's going to affect their workflow are going to want to feel like they have some form of control over it and input into it in order to maintain trust. What do I hope that folks take away from my speeches? I would say that the biggest thing that my highest level goal when I get on stage and pick up a microphone or speak into a Lavalier is that I want people to walk away with value and with things that they can actually leverage that day, that they can immediately start doing to be able to get on an even better path toward creating more value in their work. So my approach to that is to provide context and educate and inform, share new ideas and frameworks that will sort of surprise. Generally, folks find them surprising and realize, I never thought about that before. And then be able to give them tactical, tangible steps that they can take screenshots of, or send the deck after, that they can then walk away and say, okay, that is really going to help me as I think through what is my vision in the era of AI, what is my strategy and my way of creating strategy and my process for making decisions, and then how am I going to lead and manage and leverage storytelling to be able to actually effectively ignite change in the direction that I want it to go.